Yeah, I don't really like getting into the weeds too much because it can get really confusing fast and people might just have their eyes gloss over and not want to follow along. But I also feel it's necessary that we do delve into the weeds because a lot of this stuff directly impacts you, especially when it comes to being a voter, especially when it comes to the system of justice that we have in this state, and how the state house is passing legislation impacting those things. It is the WMAY morning news feed. I'm Greg Bishop. Let's talk more about judicial subcircuits and what exactly happened. So the Illinois House was supposed to be in this week. They canceled. The Senate wasn't scheduled this week, but they were scheduled last week, and both the House and Senate canceled their session. So far for this year, in the month of January, there have been at least, 12 or 13 scheduled session days. They've only met one day so far this year. And that one day they met in early January, Democrats ushered through changes to maps for the state's judiciary, and in particular created what are called judicial subcircuits. And these are circuits within the judiciary for certain areas where they created new pockets of jurisdictions. And they did this without much hearing. They did this without actually, a lot of reports indicate not really hearing from local officials that are being impacted by this. And that led to a lawsuit that was filed by a state's attorney down in Madison County. Now, I reached out to State Senator Jason Plummer. He's down in that area, in the Edwardsville area, and he applauded a recent judge's decision to temporarily block this measure that Democrats passed unilaterally on one day of session this year. And the governor shortly thereafter enacted those maps. He signed those maps. He promptly signed that legislation. Other legislation, apparently, he lets go 60 days and doesn't act on them, despite the importance of those particular bills. But this issue that they passed in one day, he signed as soon as he got that particular bill, and those maps were enacted. But there's a temporary restraining order issued by a Sangamon County judge on those maps. I talked with State Senator Jason Plummer about what ultimately happened here, and he lays out kind of an overview of sorts of where we've been, where we're at, and where we could be headed. Here's State Senator Jason Plummer.
Sure, happy to. So, I mean, as everybody knows, with zero transparency, the legislature ran this through in the middle of the night, and no communication with local officials, no communication with judges, court officers, anybody really. It just happened behind closed doors. No one knows who drew the maps. No one will say who drew the maps. I serve on the redistricting committee, and the redistricting committee had nothing to do with this. We didn't even have a hearing on it. So a lot of question marks that led to some conversations in the Metro East, where obviously Madison County was particularly singled out, and a bipartisan group of elected officials in Madison County said enough is enough, and they authorized the state's attorney to pursue legal action if he felt it was worthwhile and necessary. He deemed it to be so, and asked for a TRO, and filed some legal complaints about the legislation. The TRO was granted in Sangamon County on Monday, and we're going to move forward and see what happens.
So the temporary restraining order ultimately blocking those maps from being enacted in Madison County. And I wanted the senator to, for those who don't really understand the impact of judicial subcircuits, what this particular legislation did, so he lays it out there for us.
So basically, there's obviously a history to Madison County and its reputation from a judicial standpoint, and the trends of the voters in Madison County. And this is a court system that's been dominated by one party, and frankly by the trial lawyers bar for an extended period of time. Folks in Madison County got fed up with the reputation of their judiciary, and they started electing a lot of Republicans. And I think folks in Springfield recognize that. I think special interests recognize that, and they did not want to lose the court system. So instead of having elected officials that would act appropriately and represent the the wants and needs of their constituents, they decided to just change the rules of the game midstream. And what that has effectively done is you had two sitting Republican judges who'd announced their reelection efforts, um, countywide races. And this legislation would have done a lot of things, but one thing in particular it would have done would it have forced those two Republican judges to either not be able to run for office or force them to move to another part of the county and take away the rights of the vast majority of Madison County voters to be able to even vote in their local judicial election.
7:45 now on the WMAY morning news feed. I'm Greg Bishop, sharing with you a conversation I had with State Senator Jason Plummer, getting reaction to a Sangamon County judge blocking temporarily judicial subcircuits from taking effect. And some said that this is an attempt to pack the court for certain areas of the state. Plummer responds to that.
It was an attempt to pack the courts, which is obviously concerning. I mean, we've got two distinctly separate branches of government, and you had the legislative branch trying to force its will on the judicial branch. And whether you live in Madison County or not, that should be something that should be a red flag to everyone in Illinois. If they do this in Madison County, where wouldn't they do this? But what it also did, it wasn't just the packing of the courts, it wasn't trying to set the courts up. It also took away the vote from the vast majority of people in Madison County to be able to vote in their local judicial elections this cycle. And some people, based on where they lived in the county, probably wouldn't be able to vote for a local judge for at least 10 to 12 years.
I asked Senator Plummer also what the impact of the TRO is. Is it just for Madison County, or is it for, say, other parts of the state?
So the TRO is specific to Madison County, but I think some of the arguments made are portable to other counties that are impacted by the legislation. And I would encourage other counties that are being singled out by this legislation to take a look at it, because again, this is about the independence of the judiciary. This isn't a Republican thing or a Democrat thing. It's a good government thing. It's a transparency thing. And I highlight again that the opposition in Madison County, the authorization to vote, the authorization for the state's attorney to pursue this legal activity was bipartisan, and the majority of the Democrats on the board voted for it. I think only two Democrats voted against it, and so this is bipartisan. This is about Springfield keeping its hands off of local government. This is about separating two branches of government. It's just about transparency and good government, and that's something I think Republicans and Democrats should be able to agree on.
So that's State Senator Jason Plummer. We'll revisit the final comments he has, but I also wanted to include some of what Governor J.B. Pritzker had to say yesterday when asked about the judicial subcircuits being blocked temporarily by a Sangamon County judge. The governor was down in the Metro East area in East St. Louis at a separate news event, and he was asked specifically about this case. Here's what the governor had to say.
I don't have much to say about it. It's obviously an ongoing case. I'm surprised at who the litigants were, at least the defendants that were named in the case. As you know, there are many other people other than the Board of Elections and the governor involved in it, and so we'll have to see where it goes.
So again, that's Governor J.B. Pritzker reacting, not really providing much comment, but questioning why that the governor and the State Board of Elections and I think the clerk of the Supreme Court were the only ones when there were other people involved, he said. But again, that goes to the question that Senator Plummer has as to who drew the maps. Why was this rushed? Why was this so important to get through in that one day of session? So I asked for a response from Senator Plummer to Governor J.B. Pritzker's comments there.
Well, I think if I was the governor and I was just put in a very bad spot by the legislature by signing a bill that is clearly problematic, I'd have questions if I was the governor. I'd want to know, hey, this is redistricting. If the Senate redistricting committee didn't do this, who did this? Who pushed this legislation? Who drew the maps? I mean, this gets to the core of the rights of individuals. And what I mean by that, Greg, is if you look at Madison County, they divvied Madison County up into three new subcircuits. And one subcircuit got 3 judges, one subcircuit got 2 judges, and another subcircuit got 3 judges. But all of these regions are about equal in population. So, what happened to one person, one vote? What happened to equal representation? This entire bill was written by who knows who in a way to rig the court system. And the politicalization of our court system in this hyper-partisan era is at least something I would think Republicans and Democrats should be able to agree on. And the governor was put in a very bad spot. He foolishly signed the legislation, and I think he'll have egg on his face on this for a long time coming. I think the people in Metro East, bipartisan opposition to it, are going to have a lot of questions for the governor, who said that he would not participate in partisan redistricting. This is the epitome of partisan redistricting, and I think that the voters finally woke up in Madison County, and I'm getting phone calls from Republican and Democrat judges and elected officials across the spectrum that are very glad to see the activity that Madison County is pursuing on this.
And again, that's State Senator Jason Plummer. Conversation I had with him yesterday in reaction to a Sangamon County judge earlier this week providing a temporary block of judicial subcircuits. It is the WMAY morning news feed, and I'm